Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Joining us today is Emily Paxhia from Poseidon. But before we bring Emily on, I'm just going to quickly remind you to tap on that subscribe button. Hey, Emily, welcome back to The Dive.
Hi, Cassandra. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again. So Irwin Simon stated during Tilray's earning call that the company is looking at the US in two ways. One, through alcohol and consumer products like Manitoba Harvest that can later be converted into CBD and THC products. And secondly, through direct exposure to MSOs via optionality with a potential merger or acquisition upon legalization. Do you think that either of these scenarios make sense?
I don't think you have to have a literal hemp seed nutritional brand to enter the US market to get into CBD. So, we were early investors in Manitoba Harvest through Compass Diversified Holdings, and then they spun it out, and now it's a part of the Tilray conglomerate. But I don't necessarily see that as a high growth brand, and I also don't think it has a ton of consumer traction. So I'm not sure that that's how you would want to think about entering the space. If you talk to any executives or any brand builders who are in wine and spirits or other consumer categories, they're always looking for the most rapidly growing segments of these consumer categories, and also the brands that really do start to have kind of that fanatic following. You could have seen how this played through with the different like water companies like Vitamin Water, Smart Water, and all of the seltzers, all the hard seltzers, like what White Claw accomplished in terms of defining, frankly, an entire category. Now there's like 3 shelves of, hard seltzer in my Bevmo back in San Francisco. But so I agree that they're thinking about it in the right way, in the sense that they're thinking about it as a consumer product, which it is. But I'm not necessarily sure that those are the horses I would hitch my wagon to if I was trying to create market penetration and rapid growth.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about the state of the Safe Banking Act. What do you think the likelihood is that Biden will push this through in his first 2 years?
I don't think Biden is, I think Biden is mixed in terms of how he's starting to think about this. He showed some movement in his point of view on cannabis around the Sha'Carri event that occurred with the Olympic, with her being eliminated from the Olympics. And he kind of said, these are outdated laws or kind of guidelines. And I think that that was an important shift because he has been pretty staunchly opposed to most cannabis reform. I'm pretty sure we're going to see safe. I used to think we were going to see it this year. Now I think with this massive omnibus piece of legalization that was introduced, I think we're going to slow down the process. And so I'm hopeful we'll see it in the first quarter of 2022. But nonetheless, I think we're still marching toward progress. And I think there are a lot of pieces to that massive legalization draft that was introduced by Booker and Schumer that are very important considerations for what comes next. But I think we're going to have to pull banking out and deal with it as its own piece of legislation.
So what do you think will drive the next leg of capital into MSOs? Will it require a major political catalyst?
This industry has traditionally been very catalyst driven. It's always how the markets have really started to open up and move. And so I do think we will have to see some legalization shifts, especially around banking reform or even around capital markets. And that will be some of the things that will unlock new institutional capital getting in. We spend a lot of time working with political consultants trying to understand the ways that these different groups are viewing the industry and these different pieces of regulation that would need to pass to change the way people can access the markets, especially retail investors who presently really don't have the easy access into these MSO names that they do into the LPs, for example, or something like Grow Generation or Hydrofarm, which are listed on the exchanges. I've been spending time in New York for the past 2 weeks. I'm here for a few more weeks, and I'm actually going to be taking meetings with NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange to try to understand their point of view around the industry so that we can understand what does need to shift in the regulations to make the markets open to the operators who are touching the plant in the US.
Okay, so you recently announced your first 3 Poseidon Garden venture investments. Care to share what made you choose to invest in JKL2, Adiviv, and Dispense?
Yeah, so Dispense, I'll start with, is founded by Kyla Cerny. She and her co-founder, her CTO co-founder, Tim. We were introduced to them because, as you probably know, I'm on the board of directors of Ascend Wellness Holdings. That was a platform that Ascend really relied upon during the beginning of during and throughout this time of the pandemic, because we have some very high volume stores, and the technology solutions that existed in the market were insufficient really to serve those doors to get people through as quickly as possible. The founding team came from this platform they had been running, which was called Tablelist, which had been basically creating the same, they've been solving the same problems for nightlife, like going to clubs, going to restaurants or bars, and they had been dealing with these high volume, high demand spaces or reservations, if you could think about it that way. And so they quickly pivoted to serve the industry with Dispense. And it really was a game changer for Ascend, because as you can imagine, any person who doesn't make it through the door is a ticket lost. It's a sale that's lost. And so it's really critical for us to get people through the doors or get the orders filled. And so I had started to know about this through my time there. And that's one of the best ways when you're really involved in the industry, that you start to understand the platforms that are gaining traction. So with all three of these investments, I would say it's about team, and then it's about what they're serving in the industry. Same thing. And with Adaviv, they're really trying to go after making it easier to track and understand what's going on in the cultivation. And the cultivation, a lot of the operators don't like to talk about it, but it's the hardest part of their business, because people like to consume cannabis, they like to buy cannabis. So the retail piece is hard in its own right, but cultivating cannabis is harder than anybody likes to talk about or anybody really understands. And it's also a high value crop. So if you have a loss of something, or something starts to go wrong in one of your grow rooms, you're talking about millions of dollars that you have to navigate losing. And so Adaviv is creating a technology platform to help you get ahead of that. And it's an interesting team. They come out of MIT. So you have an engineering team, and then you also have a really savvy business side to the team. So it's that nice blending of science plus business. And so we really like that company. We're very excited about it. We've made some great introductions. And then JKL is managing white label process in Colorado. The Colorado market is still growing, even though it's in its 7th year of legal operations. And so it's an aspect of the market that's needed. Again, very team-based, have known the team for years, very excited to participate. We actually wanted to participate this in our second fund, but we were unable to because of timing. And so now we have the opportunity in our third fund.
So Connecticut's governor signed a bill legalizing marijuana last month, following New York, Virginia, and New Mexico. It appears there are still lots of states for private investors to be early on. Which states are you the most excited about?
We're still very excited about Arizona, even though it's been open for a little bit. They're showing that they're going to probably be a bigger market than Colorado, and it's growing really rapidly. We're very excited about New Mexico for similar reasons. New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, couldn't be more excited about that kind of hat trick of states that are coming online. And so, it's always about navigating the regulations and understanding how to get a foot in the door in the right way and establish yourself for that potential growth. So I would say those are the ones we're really watching. Of course, the one that I'm really excited for a long view, but I think we've got a ways to go, is Texas. But that's purely because it's a massive market. It's also a state with a history of commodities, and cannabis ultimately can be a commodity until you create brands and retail experiences around it, but they understand how to operate within that type of a market. And so I'm very excited. And it's also an agricultural market. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so for retail investors looking for the best risk-reward scenario in public names, do you favor the best-in-class operators or some of the second and third tier names where you potentially see more torque?
So there's so much torque in this entire market right now because the names have just traded down so much due to just artificial kind of externalities due to the regulations. And I think that you're seeing incredible value here in a high growth sector. I mean, it's the fastest growing consumer sector in the US. And the operational excellence we're starting to see is really proving itself out. So I feel like the entire sector is interesting. Of course, these are my opinions, not advice, but I think that, looking at things like MSOS that give you exposure across the board is kind of a nice way to participate, but then picking companies that you think might be able to really drive that torque, Jeffries just put out a report saying this is an opportunity for generational wealth. Establishment is investing into cannabis, and I have tended to agree. My brother and I founded our business on that exact thesis, and it's nice to see other people coming to the table saying the same thing. I think we see, most of the top names almost doubling once we see changes in regulation and access to the capital markets. And then, I do like that kind of, as you keep going down, like the AY errors, or some of those other names that are they're kind of on the upswing as well. So I just think there's tremendous torque in the entire sector. No, I shouldn't say the entire sector, in the good operators within the sector, but there are some really great operators in this space.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and speaking with us about your expertise.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, so be sure to subscribe.